For everybody who's joined this session, firstly, a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us today. And just a touch of housekeeping after the session, please do join our networking. You just click on the networking on the left-hand side of your screen, and the system will randomly connect you to another attendee, and you're allocated a 3-minute slot that you can chat with each other. And if you want to continue communicating after that, you must both click on the connect button, and that will, I think it emails information to each of you and you can continue afterwards, and then the system will automatically connect you with someone else for additional 3 minutes. So if the two of you find you're not of interest to each other, you can leave that, cancel that connection, and then continue with the next one. So it's really great fun, and we do encourage everybody, please, to give it a try. Right, moving on to our session. So this session is going to explore how ICT plays a critical role to enhance and secure supply chains for the participation of production of agricultural produce for local and international businesses. And I'd like to welcome Willem van Casteren. Willem is the director of eProd, and he's going to be talking about eProd solution, which is designed to handle large numbers of suppliers and how it's successfully achieving this in the current conditions, and also to look at how it's meeting the requirements of aggregators and food processors. So I hand over to you, Willem, and questions at the end of your session, towards the end of your presentation, everyone can in the chat section put their questions, and Willem will address those. Thanks very much, everybody. Let's go ahead, Jan.
Great. Thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you for the opportunity to present at this event. This is also a new experience for me, as in the last couple of weeks the world has changed so much. I think we are going to be more and more working through this kind of online events. So my name is Willem. I'm the director of eProd Solutions. I think, Wendy, your microphone might be, if you could put your mic on mute. And yeah, great, thanks. So I'm the director of eProd Solutions, and I'm actually also an aggregator, food processor, and an agricultural commodity trader since 2004. So I have experience on different areas. Actually, the software eProd Solutions, which is a management tool to source from large numbers of farmers, is actually a system that we developed internally. So I would like to share with you some slides that I prepared. Unfortunately, yesterday we learned that in case I share with this software my slides, I can't see the questions. So let me take about 20 minutes for the presentation, and then there should be enough time for questions. Great. So again, I'm the director of eProd Solutions. eProd Solutions was initially developed for a Kenyan company called Equator Kenya Limited. I started this company in 2004, and I was lucky that my business partner is an IT specialist, and we developed systems internally because we were working at the moment. The company is sourcing from about 8,000 farmers, organized in 350 groups in some of the poorest areas of Kenya, the 4 counties basically at the coast. It is a very marginal crop that we are exporting. It's called birdseye chilies. So very, very small margins, very difficult market. So we really needed a system to work cost effectively with such large numbers of farmers, make sure at the same time that we would meet the export standards. So it is a bit of a difficult market. Normally the product is actually sun-dried. In our case, we buy it fresh. We make it fully traceable and we dry it in large machines, as you can see on the picture on the right at the background. So this is basically the opportunity that we looked for, and so this way we can compete. Now, after 11 years, we realized that the software really turned into something quite special. So we call it now an ERP, Enterprise Resources Planning tool, basically to work with these large numbers of farmers. So when you are an aggregator, it is quite complicated to be able to manage all the farmers, understand the farmers, the field production, the challenges of the farmers, the access to finance, access to inputs, capacity building. So basically in our company, we developed a model around those three pillars. We first said we need to offer farmers market certainty. So we signed contracts with farmers. Then we need to be able to make sure that the farmers have the capacity to grow the right crop and the right meet the quality, the quantities and the volume and the quality required. So basically, we came up with a large-scale extension program. Sometimes we would organize more than 1,100 group training sessions in a year. And finally, we would need to link farmers to financial institutions, because even if you have market certainty, you know how to grow the crop, you still need to be able to finance it. So in eProd, we basically have developed different modules to tackle these challenges. So we commercialized the system a few years ago, and in 2015, but I think in 2017 we really started to take it serious. In the meantime, we are in 9 African countries. We're also in Afghanistan and Guatemala. The system is used in more than 20 different sectors, like product groups like the grains, millet, sorghum, maize, also the oil crops like sunflower, sesame, pulses, fresh vegetables, dairy, all kinds of different products. Now, in the system, there are different levels of that you can work with the farmers. Of course, each farmer at the end would like to be paid individually, but sometimes farms are organized in groups. Groups could be organized under cooperatives. Then, of course, you have the buyer. The buyer could be an exporter, could be local market, could be a food processor. Now, in reality, you have all kinds of combinations. So sometimes the buyer can buy directly from a farmer, a group. So all these things have to be able to be managed by the software. At the end, the buyers often also work with maybe development organizations or financial institutions, and they need to be able to share information. So we prepared a system to manage all this. So first of all, we have the opportunity to work in the cloud, but we also one of the few systems that actually can work fully offline, which is very important in actually most of the places that where we work. So that means that basically we install the system on a local area network or wireless area network, so people in the office can work. And synchronization requires, of course, internet, because there's a handheld application, but it is very light for the internet compared to having a cloud-based system. So in our case, we can offer both. Of course, you would like to know where are the farmers, where are the collection centers, where are the fields, so everything is georeferenced. Then you would like to communicate with the farmers, for example, through SMS, and you would like to also be able to prepare reports and share them. So in the system, it's very easy to share, for example, by email management reports. Now, there's a desktop application and there's the mobile application. So the entire team of a buyer would be in the system. So basically, the entire organogram is in the system, and the relationships are also in the system. So everybody knows who is the supervisor. So supervisors can assign tasks or make approvals, for example, for people in the field. So this is an example where management can be fully remote. Now, once, for example, a group has been assigned to a field staff, the field staff or lead farmer can assign farmers. They have to be approved by the supervisor. They can assign fields, for example. They can do collections, field inspections. Now, everybody is in the system, but there are different authorization levels. Some people can only view the system. Other people can enter data. Other people can, for example, prepare a payment or approve a payment. So throughout, you have a maker and a checker principle. So these are some screenshots from the mobile application. So the mobile application is of course, mainly to collect produce, but also to do surveys, or very important is to look up information. So if an extension officer is visiting a farmer or a group, there might be questions directly about outstanding loans, outstanding payments, traceability, fields, the situation of a field, all this. So all this information can be looked up. And so that is also quite a strong feature of the system. Of course, if you would like to, you can integrate mobile devices like Bluetooth scales or Bluetooth printers, so you can print, for example, receipts for the farmers after collecting the produce. Now, the system has many management reports. There are probably more than 100 reports. They can be extracted, quite flexible, different ways to present the information for the farmers, for the groups, for the field staff, for the senior management, for stakeholders like NGOs, for example, or banks. Now, one of the important things is when you're buying from farmers, you would like to pay them based on the quality, or basically manage incentives. So this is really important, because at the end, as a buyer, you're mainly interested in the good quality, and you need big volumes of that. So by paying based on quality, you can manage basically that farmers, by giving a small price incentive, farmers can deliver the good quality. Now, there are different ways that eProd can manage this. In the case of the chilies, for example, there would be simply classes of orange, basically underripe, overripe, rotten, damaged. And after a hand sample, price correction can be done, either at group level or individual level. Now, this is an example of an integration for integration with measurement devices. That could be basically any digital device. In this case, this is to measure the quality of milk. So we have many of these integrations, could be for moist content, could be for aflatoxin. Now, in the case of milk, for example, you see here that the quality of the milk can be determined. And each parameter you see on the right of the picture, you might not be able to read this, but for example, there's pH, added water. Now, for each parameter, like for example, added water, you can put a condition. So this is all backend. So you can say if added water is more than a certain value detected by the machine, you can decide to reject it. But you can also decide to give a bonus, a fine, a premium, different options. Now you can put multiple rules in the system. So for example, you could say the grain, moist content of the grain is 14%. So I have to do additional drying. So I'm charging for 2% points extra drying cost. But actually, there was also aflatoxin detected, so I had to reject. Or in the case of milk, you could say I pay a premium for high butterfat, but the milk was sour and I had to reject it. So the rules can interact. And most important, of course, is that this is communicated to the farmers, to the groups, to the field staff, to the senior management. And so the communication is something extremely important because farmers need to understand it has to be just that the price has been adjusted. Now, it's very important when you're working with farmers, especially in this situation, it has been mentioned already by the first presenters. How do you create basically cash flow for the farmers, for the SMEs? Now, it is very important for financial institutions to give loans to small-scale farmers, and even much more under the current circumstances. Farmers often don't have a relationship with the bank or the financial institution. Even if they have a bank account, it doesn't mean there's a credit record. So in this case, in eProd, you can share information, basically an alternative KYC. For example, if you want to develop an input package, the bank can agree farmers that meet certain criteria. For example, they need to have a contract, there should not be a history of default, there should be a crop in the field, the production should be above average in the group, they should participate in training. There's hundreds of variables in the system, so you can agree with the bank what are the criteria for the farmers to meet to be able to attract a loan. Now, the company can, for example, the client using eProd can have a tripartite agreement, a three-way agreement with a financial institution, for example, to accept either the loan directly and process it with the farmers. In this case, eProd can manage the repayment, or so directly, so the SME would take responsibility of the loan, or the farmers can have a loan directly with the financial institution. In this case, the company can still agree to assist with the repayment. So in eProd, there are many ways to manage the repayment. First of all, you can have multiple loans. They can be processed with different priorities. Then there are different ways to make repayment through checkoff. For example, it could be a fixed percentage of the delivery, a fixed percentage of the loan, a fixed amount per month, could be a grace period. The system is very flexible. Now, these three-way agreements, the tripartite agreements, can become quite comprehensive, even involve the input dealer, it can involve soil testing, advanced services. So the system is very, very strong in this respect, and it has been used like that basically since 2004. And there are many clients using all these functionalities. So the system also offers integration with automated services, for example, weather forecast, but it could also be pest and disease alerts, recommendations for field activities, or even yield forecasting. Yeah, so at a larger scale, you could also think of early warning systems, for example. Now, we have, for example, an integration with an American company called Aware. You see the name in the top left corner, but we are independent, so we could do this with any provider. We try to be independent because we work in so many countries. We always try to make sure that we can offer the best integration for a certain country, whether it is for the SMS or mobile payment, whether it's weather services. Now, we can offer many integrations, for example, with soil maps, with satellite images, and there's also ways to use this, for example, to monitor the crop performance during the season. Now, one of the interesting things in the system is that it's very powerful to manage surveys. So whether you need to do a household survey or baseline survey as an NGO, or you need to do some evaluations, for example, on training or scouting pests and diseases, that all this information can be collected and entered in the system as surveys. The supervisor can assign a survey to a field staff. So you see the supervisor here for a farmer. Let me show you the next slide. So if there's a staff member called Steve Kariuki. He is assigned by the supervisor a certain survey to visit the field of sorghum for a farmer called Cynthia. Now, when Steve is in the field, he will see the survey becoming active on his mobile device, the Android phone, fills in the questions. You can add, for example, location stamp, timestamp, so you can really check when and where the survey was done. The survey can then be synchronized with the office, and information is shared. If a client wants to do everything on paper, that is also possible. So you do a paper survey, type in exactly the same questions, exactly the same multiple choice, limited choice, open questions. And once, of course, the information is in the system, It is there very patiently, also to do have longitudinal studies for NGOs, for example, to monitor over long periods the performance. So you can do very comprehensive analysis, for example, for this specific survey, but over time you could also look at impact of certain activities or certain regions, compare crops, performance, etc. Now, the system is very strong in managing traceability. So this is one of the big headaches working with small-scale farmers. When you open a field, the field already has a traceability, it requires a traceability for the seed or the cuttings, whatever you have used. And then throughout the chain, you should be able to trace the product, but also link it to records, like, for example, pesticide use records, to guarantee there's no exceeding of residue levels of pesticides. So eProd is very strong there. The system is available in a number of languages. We are in East Africa. We also started in West Africa. We are basically in Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria, Malawi, Rwanda, Cameroon, Guinea. We are preparing for Senegal, Mali, Morocco. So we are growing very fast. We have all these different languages, different scripts. We are in Afghanistan, so we also have Dari Pashto. For Ethiopia, we have specifically Aymaric Tigrinya, and we just started in Guatemala, and we have added Spanish. Now, the beauty about eProd is that it's all these different modules are integrated. So it's really very useful if you want to do strategic partnerships and monitor, for example, performance over time, or have a strategic project together with a public partner, for example, or NGO. So we have, we can do remote support. We like to go on site. Under these circumstances, that is difficult. 2 weeks ago, we just completed installation in Guatemala and also training in Guatemala. So we are able to do that, which gives us a big advantage in these difficult times with this Corona pandemic. We try to make it very affordable. That is really important. So we have an objective to offer all these modules basically, roughly at $50 per farmer per year for larger organizations, or roughly €1,000, just over $1,000 per year for small cooperatives. And this would be in partnership, for example, with a development organization. So we have, I think, an interesting product. We have a lot of experience working with small-scale farmers. In the meantime, we work in more than 20 different sectors. We have 75 clients already, working with about 250,000 farmers. And because of our experience, we can really help companies transition from working with a few hundred or a few thousand farmers to a multiple of that. I think we have a very affordable license fee compared to competitors, definitely. We have a very flexible system. We can do all kinds of integrations with other ERPs, financial software, hardware. The offline functionality is really important. I think people often underestimate that for Africa. And then we have an excellent back office support team. Thank you very much. Let me go back to the presentation. Great. I see there are quite a few questions. As I explained, I was not able to see the questions during my presentation. That's the way the software is. Let me see. Okay, maybe it's not fair for everybody who posted questions. Let me just start at the end about, I see a question about a SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis would be more internal, external, depending on, maybe, let me see if I understand the question correctly. Okay, I don't think we offer SWOT analysis. What we can do, and we have discussed this with clients, that we can offer basically through the surveys, collecting information about field expenditures, like fertilizer cost, labor cost, and of course, the system also generates revenue from sales. So basically, you can do a gross margin analysis, compare that between crops, between regions, among staff, And so in that sense, we can offer at least quite comprehensive analysis. I see another question about so the cost of the product. I think I have explained it in the meantime. So we really try to offer this at affordable rate for an organization with up to 10,000 farmers would basically annually pay €4,000, just over $4,000 per year, which is roughly $0.50 per farmer per year. Smaller organizations up to 5,000 farmers would roughly pay also $0.50 per year. And in the case of very small companies that have just a few hundred or up to 1,000 farmers, we charge about $1,000 per year. Let me go to the next question from Bruce Hillier. Okay, I think I answered this question. Okay, so there's a question from Bram Konje. So the system can actually manage multiple products at the same time. Each product can have its own quality parameters. Each product, of course, has its own price. And there can be multiple fields with all these different crops at the same time. At the collection center, you can have you can collect the different products at the same time. The payment overviews have the possibility to separate the cost. To separate deliveries by product, by farmer, by group. There's so many different options. So definitely you can work with multiple products at the same time. In our own company, we used to do chili peppers, but also paprika. But that is, of course, a very simple example. You can also, we have clients, they do, for example, stevia and also dairy, a completely different product. As I said, each with their own pricing, quality parameters. Let me look at another question. Okay, so are you working anywhere in the aquaculture sector? Well, I'm happy you asked this question. Yes, we have, first of all, I think we have a really nice solution for that. We have a client in Nigeria. I'm not sure if I can pronounce the name, Olungurere, something like this. And they are working with farmers that have fish ponds. They assist with the fingerlings, the floating feed. Yeah, so, yeah, basically, very, very interesting case where all these different aspects are basically used for fish pond farming, aquaculture. And your second part of the questions, are there reports that you share? Okay, so this is also very important. We as with my private sector background, we decided that the data of the system should be with the client. So this is how we introduce the system. So we as a company actually cannot even access the data of the client. So this was very important in the beginning for the client to have trust that that we could not access the data. And in the meantime, now we have seen with the 75 clients that they are happy. We have a good product. Companies are renewing. We are building what we call a big data platform where the information from all the different clients can come together. And for example, we can offer a bank or an NGO to really dig into the data. There will be all kinds of analytical tools. This can help, for example, with the M&E of projects. We call it stakeholder-owned M&E. So this information can be shared at a higher level. But of course, with each individual client, we need to agree which information can be used with which NGO, for example, or which bank. Because we have to take into account the Data Protection Acts in each country. So this is a very powerful tool. So in practice, it is actually the data protection is not such a big problem. I'll give you an example. In Afghanistan, we have about 30 different companies doing saffron, pistachio, different products. Now they are all working with a USAID-funded program called Afghanistan Value Chain High Value Crops Program. It's implemented by a contractor called DAI. So we have an agreement with DAI to introduce the system there. DAI has put it in the project's agreements, the deal notes with these companies, and they have agreed to share some of this information. So information from eProd is now shared, and it can basically flow directly into the M&E projects, in the M&E reports, and shared with the donor. The same we can do it with banks, for example. So once we have the big data platform ready, it will even be more easy to share, but also to restrict. So we can agree for a certain country or for a certain sector across countries that some information can be shared. So for example, with Aware, we can do crop monitoring, we can do yield forecasting. So imagine you have in multiple countries farmers with maize crop. You can predict basically the yield. So you would have an early warning system. So there are many ways that we can share the information. For the short term, the big data platform would be available for strategic partners. So, for example, we have a strategic partner called CRS, Catholic Relief Services. They are in 100 countries. So they introduce us to their private sector partners in those countries. And in return, we will make agreements that CRS can benefit from having this unique data in one enormous platform. So this is our initial intended use of the system. We are not planning to commercialize it directly, where basically you have to pay for each report. We could do the same with banks. We actually are promoted a lot by banks because they see really the value of the KYC and, of course, also the managed repayment. Okay, let me try to move to the next question. So how has COVID impacted on the use of your system? So we see actually we are a little bit overwhelmed with all the attention now. Obviously, our system is designed to work remotely with farmers. This has always been there. Now we suddenly realize that companies are suddenly taking it much more serious. There's also some new developments. For example, especially on the side of mobile payment, a lot of companies insisted to continue paying cash, even though eProd can manage bulk payments. And now suddenly you see there's a lot of interest in the integration with banking systems. We have, for example, from Malawi, there's an organization, a commodity exchange. They are very interested in adding some functionality where, for example, the clients of the commodity exchange can now see what are the stocks in the different stores. So we are adding this functionality. So these are all things that technically we could do it. There was never really a lot of demand for it. Suddenly, because of COVID, there's really a high demand, and hopefully we develop a lot of these functionalities. So there's a question from Renzi van Rensburg, whether we have integrated the system with other systems deployed in the field. So first of all, eProd is basically like a full ERP. So most aspects are already in the system. We can do integrations, for example, with specific services like sensor technology, or for example, the weather information, automating weather forecasting, and share that with farmers, yield forecasting. So here, to do this, we can do what we call APIs. So we integrate it with other companies that are specialized in that. So, for example, if a company is interested recently we had a request, a company, they wanted to use a specific tool to select new agents. So the agents are, of course, in this case, the agents were helping promote soil analysis. So these agents needed to be selected, meeting certain criteria. And so we make an integration with the other tool. So you don't have separate systems. Often we talk to companies, they can have 4, 5, or 6 different systems in place, and they're not integrated. For example, a system to pay the farmers, a system to map the farmers, a system to communicate with the farmers, everything disintegrated. So we are actually very flexible, also upwards with ERPs, for example. We are discussing now with Buller. Buller Group is one of the large manufacturers of processing equipment for almost most sectors in agriculture. So they really specialized in the pre-processing. So their ERPs, for example, to manage traceability, other aspects, we can also integrate with. We can integrate with ERPs of breweries, or all these integrations are possible. So I see another question from Lesol. Does our system work for individual farmers? Okay, so our system is really organized around the buyer. So the buyer could be a food processor, a commodity trader, farmer cooperative. So you could involve lead farmers and then basically put a lead farmer as a staff member in the system. But our system is really meant for the buyer, for big organizations, not for individual farmers. Now, the system can share information with individual farmers. So this is, for example, weather information or price information, information about collections or weather alerts. That is what the system does. But it is not something where the individual farmer would log in on the phone. We also see in practice most farmers, they don't have smartphones. Our system, the application is really meant for a smartphone and simple smartphones, Android, and staff. And the communication would be through SMS or maybe two-way SMS, but it's not the farmers directly logging in. I see a question from David Finchan. Data is critical for all aspects of sector development, investment, research, marketing, training, skills development. We look forward to your big data platform bringing growth to agriculture. Thank you. Yeah, so the big data platform is actually something that we are raising actively money for at the moment. We are discussing with different investors. We will basically the functionality is already there. We just want to make this much easier and accessible for many different people for different purposes, especially also on the side of protection of the data. So it could be possible that for some people it is required to make the information anonymous. For other people, maybe this is not an issue. So our platform has to guarantee that all this information can be separated and basically guided. And then there will be many tools to, well, of course, you can export it and do analysis in your preferred tools like SPSS or ArcView or whatever. But a lot of the basic functionality, like for example, creating your own dashboards where you can monitor online performance of, let's say, your private sector that you have supported as an NGO or whatever you want to do. So all these tools will be available in the big data platform. I believe I've answered most questions. I'm very happy to continue talking. I probably should say that there are some speed dating parallel sessions going on. If you would click on networking, you can the platform will link you to other people and you can have a chat. You can disconnect the chat if you want or continue talking. I think there's a time limit for up to 5 minutes. But in the meantime, if you're interested, I'm very happy to answer more questions. I cannot hear you, but if you put your questions in the system, I also would like to put my email address in case you were not able to catch it. and I can put my my WhatsApp number. I would be very happy to talk to you in more detail. We are in a number of countries. We are in Southern Africa. Quite a few people in the list I see are, well, I guess are from South Africa. So we are not in South Africa at the moment, but we are in Malawi, Rwanda. We have some discussions for Zimbabwe. Very keen to expand. The way we have set up our software, we are basically quite flexible to work in any of the countries. Even adding a language is not a very big step for us. We already have a number of languages, but if one specific language would be important, we can add that for you. Great. Are there any other questions? Yeah. Maybe I can tell you a little bit about some of the future developments. So at the moment, a lot of our focus is on integrating soil analysis and make sure that our clients can offer that as a service. So we have this discussion with an organization called ISDA. So for Kenya and soon in Ghana, we are working together for the coffee sector and other sectors also to integrate soil analysis, and specifically the recommendations from the soil analysis, automate those to the farmers. The inputs can be available maybe via micro blending plants or basically through localized input dealers with voucher systems. So this is this is something that we see. So with ISDA, but also with OCP Group. OCP Group is the largest phosphate manufacturer in the world, a Moroccan company. So with them, we have the same discussions to introduce this for Morocco and Mali and Senegal as a pilot. So that is very important. Another important area where we are further focusing on is the quality-based payment. And we see that most sensors to measure quality of product are basically designed to use them in a laboratory. So this is not very practical, like you saw in the case of milk. So the device that you saw, those devices, you can't really take them to the field. They're also not precise enough, and the measurement time is very long. So if you have hundreds of farmers or tens of farmers at least waiting, you cannot have a device that takes 1 or 2 minutes to measure the quality. So we have the integration where basically the quality parameters are linked to the delivery, and then you can trigger the payment correction. So we are developing a device based on using near infrared, basically light. The reflection of the light can tell what is inside the product. So for example, the parameters for milk, like added water, butterfat, pH, can be detected by near infrared. Added sugar in honey, for example, germination rate, it can predict bricks, sugars, many different things it can measure. Yeah? So if you look up adulterations and near infrared, you will find all kinds of interesting analysis that can be done. So we are working on this integration. We are also we look at for the same for near infrared, Raman spectrography, and even CT, basically X-ray, to do the same, but then develop applications that can be taken to the field. Great. So if there are no other questions, I would like to thank you very much, and also the African Agri Council for this opportunity again. If you send me an email, I would be very happy to share a bit more background information. If you're interested to discuss collaboration, or if you have a need in your company for a system like this, we'd be very happy to plan a call so we can give you a live demo and show you how things can be done in the system. Great. So in case there are no further questions, then thanks again, and hope to see you in the networking session. Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye.